Good morning, one and all. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Hope you're all well. Hope you're all warm. I'm going to say a good morning to Andy Darvell, who's just crept in while I wasn't paying attention. Let's press his button, make sure he gets a proper welcome. I'm wearing a scarf indoors. That's how cold it is this morning. And as they say, pinch, punch, first day of the month. I've no idea how it's December already. It feels like it was June just a few days ago. However, just a very quick reminder, just in case you need to know this, Christmas is now just 24 days away. So I sincerely hope you've started your shopping. No one wants to celebrate the birth of Christ with a box of chocolates from the local service station. Going to hop over to the chat and say good morning to Gary Lyons, who's just joined us over on YouTube. Don't remember seeing Gary here before. So on that basis, Gary, this is for you. Welcome, confetti. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Where are you in the world? What do you do for a living? How did you find us? And any other questions you care to answer, you're very welcome. Chris Ford is here as well. And who else have we got? Dan Cullen, top of the morning to all our plant addicts, plant porn addicts, I think that is. And Graham Footy Williams, he and I see eye to eye on this. Humbug, yes, Christmas. Now, not only is it the first day of Christmas, it's also the last proper working day of the week. So I'll be doing my very best to send you off into the weekend with a spring in your step, a smile on your face, and a song in your heart. No guarantees on any of that. I'll also be doing my level best after yesterday's chaos. Try to press the right buttons in the right order, but again, no guarantees. So without further ado, let me roll the intro, post the question of the day, and try to get this show on the road. Need to say a very quick good morning to our friend Peter McKenna, who is watching from LinkedIn but can't see us on Facebook for some reason. I would press your button, Peter, but it won't play over where you are. So good morning to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Now, as I've already said, it is Friday, the 1st of December. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony. In today's show, when Africans and Indians combine, Keestrack is crushing it. When the old and the new come together, there's another new cat and another inexplicable name. Plus, McMahon Services from way down under delivers true social value. But before we get to all of that stuff and nonsense, oh dear, Peter McKenna is playing musical chairs with social media platforms. He was on LinkedIn because he couldn't get on Facebook. Now he's over on YouTube. I'm trying to nail you down, Peter, but thank you for joining us anyway. And there's our friend Andy Bullock. Morning, Andy. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Yes, I've said we're going to peer back through the mists of time. So what say we do that? And I'm going to press the right button today. On this day in 1822, the composer Franz Liszt made his debut as a concert pianist in Vienna. He was 11. Wow. In 1887, Sherlock Holmes made his first appearance in print when Arthur Conan Doyle published Study in Scarlet. Has that ever been made into a movie? I'm sure it must have been. In 1913, the Ford Motor Company instituted the world's first moving assembly line to keep up with demand for its Model T car. In 1953, stand by your bed. Big date in history, this. In 1953, Hugh Hefner published the first ever edition of Playboy, complete with a certain Marilyn Monroe as the centerfold. 1953. In 1971, John Lennon released the single Happy Christmas, War is Over. He was right about the Happy Christmas, not so much about the war is over. In 1990, British and French workers met in the middle of the English Channel, under it, obviously, as the Channel Tunnel made its final breakthrough. And just as remarkable as the Playboy thing, on this day in 2019, the first COVID-19 patient was identified in Wuhan in China. That didn't turn out well, did it? Now, before we get into the real meat of the show, I'm going to remind you of our question of the day. Yeah, if you were... Sorry, coffee. If you were here yesterday, you may recall that our friend Peter McKenna casually casted aside, threw a superb question of the day into the mix. And his question was this: what things surprised you about being an adult? Mine wasn't so much a surprise as a shattered illusion. I was pretty sure that I'd probably get to about 18 or 19, and then I could do what I liked, when I liked, with who I liked, and no one would tell me what to do any longer. It turned out things actually got worse when I became an adult. Everybody seemed to be telling me what to do. There's another thing too, and I realised this was a childish fantasy, but bear with me. Because my dad was on shift work when I was growing up, I often didn't get to see him much before until Friday night. So on Friday night, he used to come home with a white paper bag filled with what I call grown-up sweets. Munchies, you know, the big tube of Munchies, and Mintola, the minty version, Fry's Turkish Delight, Fry's Cream, grown-up sweets. And as a kid, I convinced myself that I would eat those all the time when I grew up. Instead, I now long for the cheaper sweets of my childhood: blackjacks, fruit salad, Pink Panther chocolate. Who remembers Pink Panther chocolate? But what about you? What about being an adult surprised or possibly disappointed you the most? Let us know in the chat. Cracking question, Peter. We'll come back to that at the end of the show. Now, we have a question of the day. We have a question of the day from our friend Peter McKenna, but he's also thrown this one up. This is not the question of the day, but question of the day. How many people aren't actually your friends and are just out to take your money? I've met lots of charlatans over the year. Present company isn't included in my findings. I love all my DM pals. Yes. Yes, I've met a few of those over the years. I've just spotted Gary's answer to the question of the day. I'm so looking forward to delivering it to you. Now, I am going to press on. So, back in August last year, Indians and Africans came together for a big bang. I realise they're separate continents, but bear with me. A pair of 100 metre tall tower blocks were to be demolished in Uttar Pradesh. So a coalition was formed between local company Edifice Engineering and by South African explosive demolition specialist Jet Demolition. Jet Demolition, fantastic company. Love them to death. Now, we covered the resulting implosion at the time. However, our friends at Jet Demolition have just released the official film of the blast because they were named as runner-up at the World Demolition Awards last month. And they very kindly shared that film with us now. I think you're going to enjoy this. I could comment on that, but I'm going to let Footy Williams comment on it. Wow. Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. There's our friend Peter. Wow, awesome choreography. And there's Ken Hatcher, teeth chattering as we speak. Good morning, he says, from down in Welsh Wales, where it's bloody freezing. And Dan Kahn says, wow, it looks an awesome blast. Bloody great music to suit. Yeah, indeed. Totally agree. So, that, I guess, is what you call cross-continental collaboration, the Indians and the South Africans coming together. So congratulations to the team at Jet Demolition and Edifice Engineering on a job well done. And thank you in particular to Rachel for sending us that clip. Absolutely awesome. And hats off on the World Demolition Award. Well deserved. Let's have a bit of this.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Yeah, you just saw a pair of 100-metre tall tower blocks come crashing to the ground. That's a lot of concrete to process. So maybe they could use something like this from Keestrack. bearing in mind that's a machine that basically turns big rocks into little rocks. Really beautiful film. Really enjoyed that. Now, we've already seen what happens when Indians and Africans come together. Next up, we're going to witness the confluence of old and new. But before we get to that, we need a spot of this. Gary Muirhead is on fire this morning. Going back to the edifice engineering and the jet demolition job, he says that tower fell like a stack of poppadoms. Yes, it did. It did fall. Can I just quickly? I'm going to say good morning to Wolf Wilder, who's just joined us from the States. Morning, mate. Thank you very much indeed for being morning, buddy. Should I say? Thank you for being here. Just a very quick point on poppadoms. You know, when you go out with friends for an Indian meal and they bring up the poppadoms. What is your own personal etiquette on eating said poppadoms? I like me a poppadom dunked in a bit of mango chutney or a bit of mint sauce. Love that kind of thing. What is your etiquette? The reason I ask is my family, we all take a poppadom and we put it by the side of the plate and we sit there and we do dippy and all that. We went out with another family and the male, you know, the father, my opposite number in this family. Fist right through the whole lot. My personal belief is that should have deserved a punch in the throat. But am I wrong? Please let me know. How do you go about eating poppadoms? I'd love to hear from you. Now, what was I talking about? Yes. New and old. In the field of demolition, the crawler crane and the wrecking ball combo is the very epitome of the old school. And let me just get rid of Gary's comment there. We'll come back to him a bit later on. Meanwhile, the high-reach excavator that largely replaced it is seen as the new school solution. But what if you could put the two together? You know, an old school, new school mashup. Well, you'd get something like this. I'm going to come back to that because for some reason, is anybody else hearing music? There is music on it, but I can't hear it. Can anybody tell me if they are hearing music? If anybody knows, well, just while we're biding our time, Mick Norton has just said, anybody got any information on the latest Yanmar prototype electric mini excavator where they've introduced a challenge for conventional hydraulic systems, an elastic actuator composed of an electric motor, reducer and spring? If anybody knows anything about all things Yanmar, please get in touch. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Do we have any longer films? We've got one of a couple of minutes. That might be enough. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to skip that new versus old thing. I'll come back to that. And I'm going to play this. And while you're watching what's about to come, hopefully I'll be able to do something and bring you that film properly. So let me play this one first.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Yeah, all my buttons are all out of order now, but yes, let's have a look. You might recall, if you were here yesterday, you might recall I was bemoaning the Caterpillar machine naming convention that gave us the CAT 323D3H. Ken Hatcher very kindly helped me to get my head around that number system. So I'm hoping he can also help me explain what a CAT 320D3GC is. While you're thinking about it, let's have a look at it. Should we talk lunchboxes very quickly? Graham Footy Williams says, no lunchbox on its arse end. And Gary Muirhead says, I can see Cat going back to the old ways, getting rid of that stupid big high back end, the lunchbox. Dan Cullen points out, no quick hitch, apparently. Great music, love it, says Dan Cullen. Speaking of music, I've added some new music to the video I was trying to play you earlier. The problem was, I don't know if you can see it. I've got in-ear monitors so that I can hear the music here. But as a result of that, I've chosen some music completely at random. So I haven't heard the tune that I'm about to play you. It could all go horribly wrong. It could be utterly inappropriate. Could be full of swearing as well. I have honestly no idea. So let me just try this. I'm going to get rid of that comment very quickly. We will come back to the comments at the end of the show, I promise. Yes, I was talking about new versus old and all of the things, and you get the idea. Wrecking Ball and High Reach. Let's just hope the music's playing, A, and B, kind of in keeping. We'll see. Music wasn't far off, was it? Yeah, I think it was okay. Can't help thinking that job looks like an Andy Darvell wet dream. On a crane in the morning, high reach in the afternoon. Maybe I'm just being sentimental, but I can't help thinking we lost the Wrecking Ball a bit too soon. Speaking of Wrecking Balls, I know I saw a message here from Mick Norton, who says, none of today's card schemes will produce an operator for a crawler crane and Wrecking Ball attachment. Who has the necessary hands and feet and eye coordination that old school demolition company operators excelled at? And I have to say, I've already said, partly out of sentimentality, I do remember seeing my last ever Wrecking Ball. It was fun enough working on a chimney down in Carlshilton, right near where I lived at the time. I think we lost it too soon because in the right hands, as Mick Norton has just said, you put a proper operator on it. It was pretty damned effective. It really was. Who else have we had commenting here? Let's have a look. There's Andy Darvell. I'd love to have a go on a ball and crane. Yeah. Why would you not? Whatever Gary Muirhead says, I can imagine you'll go home at night with a very sore neck looking up at that demo ball all day. Yeah, that was obviously pre-tilting cabs, I would say. Wolfwalder actually got the music through this time, which is good to see. Peter McKenna says, every time I watch a Wrecking Ball clip, it reminds me of the guy from Storage Wars UK. Every time the ball hits, I hear boom, boom, boom in my head. Never seen that. Never seen. Boom, boom, boom reminds me of Baldrick in Blackadder, but that's a whole other story. Dan Cullen says, that's cool. Love the Wrecking Ball. Pity they don't use them here. No, it's probably been the best part of 30 years since I last saw one turn a wheel here in the UK. And Ken Hatcher, thank you very much indeed, Ken, for approving of the music. Another new comment's just come in. Gone way too soon, the Wrecking Ball. I totally agree. Now, we do have one final film, which hopefully has its own music, and I'm not going to have to intervene. But we'll be right back with that after this.
If you would like to buy a limited edition Break Fast show sticker, head on over to buymeacoffee.com/demolition news/extras.
The term social value is bandied around a lot these days in construction and demolition circles. In fact, it's bandied around so much it's just become another marketing expression that has kind of lost its meaning. But when it's done right, social value has real value.
On the old Murray Bridge refurbishment, being able to work and collaborate with Keestrack and McMahon's has been really rewarding, because in the contract for DIT, they had a quota of 5%, and working in partnership with us as the Nuttingdry Aboriginal Corporation, we've been able to stretch that quota to being able to reach 20% Aboriginal employment and 13, 14% Nuttingdry employment, which for me is probably one of the most significant things, because when you invest in people and you invest in communities, you're starting to transform their lives.
Been fantastic. McMahon services using local trades to help out with their large project. Been a lot of locals engaged to help. It's been enjoyable for the locals to be part of something that's quite historic.
I think the City of Murray Bridge definitely did benefit from having the McMahon workers here in town, not just for a business of ourselves that has accommodation and food and beverage, but also the petrol stations and the supermarkets that are in here. I don't think there was a small business that didn't benefit in some way from having McMahon workers here.
With the work across the road, it's been really cool. The McMahon crew come in every morning and they get their coffees and pastries and come in for morning tea, lunch. It's been awesome.
So we've worked closely with DIT. We have regular catch-ups. We were involved in meeting with corrections out at Mobilong Prison, and also Department of Corrections here in Murray Bridge that look after people that are on parole or home detention or just coming out of the system. So it's allowed us an opportunity to engage those people and bring them into the project and give them meaningful jobs.
McMahon sponsored the club, and we put that money towards the Australasian Speed Car title last year in conjunction with Made to Go, which was a huge event. Brought drivers in from New Zealand, Queensland, pretty much Australia-wide to contest that.
I see any development or improvement to the town as being to the benefit of all of us. And so our little business is one way that we can support what's going on. So we're only too happy to do what we can. And hopefully McMahon's are happy with the way we've been able to look after their workers.
The local economy and the local Aboriginal people here that work for us, they spend money in the town, their kids are going to school, they're talking about their parents working on this significant project. It's a flow-on effect to not only the people that work for us, but to their immediate families and the community overall.
I think that's an absolutely brilliant reframing of the role of demolition and construction. Here in the UK, and I don't know, Wolfwold, what it's like in the States, but here in the UK, the arrival of a demolition or construction crew is always portrayed in terms of noise and dust and disruption. But look at that flip side. As an example, and this is live as we speak. Literally, I'm live, but this is live as we speak. My local railway station currently being upgraded. The initial reaction from local residents was all about the disruption it would cause. And yes, we have lost about a dozen parking spaces in the local town that is just a few hundred yards away from where I'm sat. But the station has remained open throughout, and all of our local bakers and cafes and the local pub never been busier. And to my mind, that's real social value. Love to hear your thoughts on all of that. Let's have a look. Dan Cullen says, that's one of the biggest expenses of working man, woman today, going to the cafe and buying coffee rolls. If you cut that, you save money, but it's supporting jobs. Yeah, and I realise a lot of people take their own sandwiches with them, and fair play to them. Always like to pack lunch. Don't know why. Maybe but going back to going fishing with my dad. Always took a packed lunch for that kind of thing. But yes, it is. It is that circular. It's not circular economy. But if you're spending money locally, then local people benefit, and so on down the line. Mick Norton says UK tier one contractors could learn a lot from that concept of social value. The potential benefits for local communities on large projects are more often than not overlooked. My personal belief, and listen, I'm not in the front line of these things, but my personal belief is that the term social value has become somewhat bastardized. It's now something like we talk about gender diversity and racial diversity. Do you have social? Do you have gender diversity? Yes, we do. Tick the box. Do you have sexual diversity? Yes, we do. Tick that box. Do you have great social values? Yes, we do. Tick that box. But when it's done right, but bearing in mind, I mean, I realised we were talking about Indigenous peoples there, the Aboriginal people there, but bringing them into the job and the skills that will be imparted there. Yes, they were doing that for one project, but the people that come out of that project, Aboriginal or otherwise, will now have a set of skills, transferable skills that they can use elsewhere. It may actually get them back into employment, which is good for them, good for the economy, good for everyone. That's somebody else, who was it? Mick Norton asked about the Yanmar thing. The Yanmar question answerable. The servos used are of similar construction to the motors and servos used in the manufacture of exoskeletons that are in production for humans. Not sure if that helps answer the question or not, but thank you for that. Dan Cullen says, now another point is, why are the English people always complaining when a new job site starts up instead of being glad? New homes, offices being built, and get over it. I think, oddly enough, while some of those films were playing, I was bagging up literally the last couple of books. I was giving away free children's books. And one of the things that I've been so keen to point out with the books and various other bits and pieces. I've been to schools and colleges and stuff, and I know my mate John Woodward has done dozens more than I have. But trying to get young people to understand the role of construction, like, if you're talking to a bunch of school children in a school, you see this school around you. Construction built that. You remember when your mum or your dad brought you to school this morning in the car and they drove you on the road? Yeah, construction built that. When you go home tonight and you get back home to your house or your flat or whatever it might be, construction built that. And just trying to, and I'm not talking about 17 and 18-year-olds here. I'm talking about 5, 6, 7-year-olds. You're trying to get them to understand the absolutely critical role that construction plays in the world, absolutely the world, and the economy as well. Without construction, you'd have nowhere to live, you'd have nowhere to work, you'd have nowhere to go to school, you wouldn't have a hospital, you wouldn't have a railway station, you wouldn't have an airport, and so on down the line. I think it's all overlooked. Friday morning, I said I was sending you away with a smile, and here I am on my soapbox. Tell you what, I'm going to wrap up the main part of this morning's show. I'm going to roll the outro in just a few moments. I'm going to get that off the screen first, and then I'm going to leap gazelle like I always do into the chat, and then we're going to have a good old chinwag then. If you can't stick around for that, please stay safe, look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. Have a good day, have a good weekend as well, stay warm, but if you do have the time and the inclination, please stick around, because I'll be back with the Craic right after this. Right, let me go right back to the very beginning because I do want to get things in the right order, which is not like me at all. Dan Cullen was first off the mark. Dan Cullen, who, as far as I can tell, is the only person currently enjoying the weather. Personally, listen, I don't need to wear it. I'm doing it for a bloody fashion statement, for crying out loud. But I'm wearing a scarf indoors. It is freezing out there. And there's Dan running around on site in his mankini, lapping up the ice. What the hell is wrong with you, man? You need to get some sun on your bones, I think. Gary Muirhead. Morning, Gary. Good morning, Mark. Good morning, guys. Happy Friday, everyone. Happy Friday. And happy 1st of December. 24 sleeps. And then Santa is going to break and enter your house. Or something. Dan Cullen. There you are, Dan Cullen. My gosh, it's wonderfully cold today. Love it. A madman. What the hell's wrong with him? Good morning, everyone, says Glenn Johnson. Morning, Glenn. Footy's here as well. Good morning, Footy. Just a very quick one, and I don't have it to hand, but somebody sent me a press release today talking about weather delays. Apparently, if you're working for particularly local authorities, and I think it was specifically in London, if your project is delayed due to weather, i.e. it's so cold, so wet, or so muddy that you can't work, you face a penalty. Act of God? Does that not apply in construction? If anybody knows, I'd love to hear from you. Mr. Darvell crept in while nobody was looking. Morning, Andy. The Darvellous Andy Darvell. Morning, mate. Hope you're having a good day today. Gary Lyons, I've already given him his welcome confetti, but Gary, thank you very much indeed for being here. Hope you're going to become a show regular. It is one of those shows, and I listen, I have no idea why, but people that come tend to stick around. So hope to see you again very, very soon. Maybe we'll have a bit more of a chat, find out what you're all about. Chris Ford says, good morning, gang. And Dan Collins says, top of the morning, all our plant porn addicts. I mentioned Christmas. Footy said, humbug. I kind of agree. I've got pantomime to go to next week. Is there anything about this face that says he's the kind of guy that will enjoy a pantomime? Is there anything at all? I don't think so. Who else have we got? No, I tell you what. Here is the question of the day. What surprised you most about being an adult? And I don't think mine were surprises. Mine were more disappointments. I was expecting the shackles to come off when I became an adult. Turns out you lose the shackles of your mum and dad telling you what to do, and then society tells you what to do, and your career tells you what to do, and all of a sudden you're actually in a worse off position. Just thought I'd say. Peter McKenna is dotting about the place. He started on LinkedIn, he popped over to YouTube, and I think we find out later he's cured Facebook, so he's there now. Andy Bullock, morning Andy, good morning to you, sir. Hope you're fit and well. Mick Milton's here, and Mick's got a question about Myanmar in just a moment. I'll come back to that in just a second. Yeah, I wrote a thing maybe a month ago, which it's not for demolition and stuff, but I wrote it because it was in my head. And I wrote a thing called self-inflicted loneliness, because I don't have day to day. I don't have. Take this in the way that it's meant, please. If I were sat here on a Friday evening and thought, wife's out, I'll go and meet one of my friends. Don't have one. I had two really, really close friends. One of them, sadly, is no longer with us. The other one now lives up in Liverpool. And I, as a younger guy, particularly when I, married, children, so you're fully occupied anyway, I was okay with that. I was quite comfortable with that. But now I've got a bit more time on my hands, I do realise just how deprived of male friendship I am. And I think part of it comes down to what Peter has said there. It turns out some people aren't your friends. And mine, I don't believe any of mine were ever after taking my money. But charlatans and people that were friends with you because it benefited them to be friends with you. And then when they gained that benefit, they would have, they just go their separate ways. Had that a lot over the years. Anybody got any thoughts on that? Treat this as a therapy session. Dan Cullen says, apparently Winston Churchill was born on this day in 1871. That didn't come up in my list, but Dan, he's a wise man. If he says it, if he says that's the case, that's the case. Now, I did say that Gary Muirhead had a fantastic answer to our question of the day today, or should I be more specific? The question of the day from Peter McKenna, and it is this. The older you get, the more hair grows out of places you didn't know you had places. I'm losing the beard in a not too distant future. Probably lose it in the run-up. It may even be next week. Going to get rid of the beard for a little while. It's been around for about 5 or 6 years, and I think it's about time I had a bit of a freshen up. So I'm going to get rid of the beard. So I'm going to go to my local barber, and he's going to tidy up the dear little bit of hair that I've got left on my head. But while I'm there, he will trim my eyebrows. When I was 18, 19, when I was 25, my eyebrows never grew. My eyebrows looked the same at 18 as they did when I was 30. Exactly the same. And then all of a sudden, they started, rather than growing sort of across, they started to grow out like antenna. While I'm there, he will also probably trim some nose hair. I've had that thing, you know, with the sticky stuff up your hooter and they pull it out. Not a fan of that. So, but he will trim the hair on my ears. Why on God's earth? What? Listen, I understand the whole idea of having hair up your nose. It's partly to protect you from inhaling stuff that you're not supposed to inhale. I understand that. And I mean, even eyebrows, what are they there for? Some sort of guttering to stop water running in your eyes? I don't know, but maybe it's something like that. I get that. But what is the purpose of having hair on the edges of your ears? That can't serve any purpose, surely. If it did serve a purpose, you'd be born with it, or you'd have it when you were in your teens. Why have I suddenly hit 50 and I've now got hairy ears? And while we're on the subject of griping about things, this one, Footy, my friend, you have hit the nail on the head, right? Are chocolate bars getting smaller, especially wagon wheels? Right, so strap in, people. I've got plenty to say about this. When I was a kid, and I know my children mocked me for this, when I was a kid, a Mars bar was about that big. It was like a proper, and I realised I had smaller hands at the time, but it was a proper fistful of chocolate. Now, diddy little thing. Wagon wheels. Not only have wagon wheels got smaller, the last wagon wheel I had, which is a few years ago, I've got to say, no jam in the middle. They used to have jam. I realise if you're a younger generation and you've had wagon wheels without jam, you're probably thinking that I've had a drink this morning. I promise you, wagon wheels used to have jam in them. And the whole advert, when they first started, they were called wagon wheels because they were as big as the wheel on a wagon. They're huge bloody things. They were a meal for four. Getting carried away a bit. But they were an absolutely huge thing. Properly worthwhile. Now, they're like a bloody Oreo. What the hell happened? Why? The price has gone up, we're getting less. Maybe that's what bugs me more. Question of the day. You'd learn more on the job than any school classroom. It's probably just as well that they don't tell children that, because nobody would actually bother going to school. But it's absolutely true. I mean, bearing in mind, I studied English, mainly because I'm English, but I studied English, and then I studied English literature, and then I went on to do A-level English and stuff like that. And I did the whole journalistic training thing. Nothing taught me more about doing this for a living than doing this for a living. Working with people that were better at it than I was, working with editors that knew how magazines and newspapers worked, knocked off your rough edges and told you, yes, your flowery style of writing is very, very attractive, but we haven't got room for that. Bollocks. Get rid. Strip it down. Strip it down. Strip it down. It knocks off your rough edges. Much as, and listen, I'm sure it's exactly the same. Whatever your walk of life that is watching this show, I'm sure somewhere along the line, somebody that's been there and done it and has got the T-shirt has told you the error of your ways. Probably took you more than any of your school teachers, would be my guess. Ken Hatcher is freezing bloody cold, like only a Welshman can be. Morning, Ken. Wow, says Graham Footy Williams about the jet demolition edifice engineering. Wow, indeed. Wow, awesome choreography. I obviously we've featured the one before with the two chimneys clashing that I think it was Brown and Mason did some years ago up at Cockenzie Power Station. But I do wonder, when that comes into the conversation, that you get through the tender stage, you are going to be taking down a pair of towers, or 3 towers, or 5 towers, possibly, side by side. Is there a discussion that says, right, we know how we're going to do it, we know when we're going to do it, and we know why we're going to do it. Now let's talk about making it really sexy for YouTube. I wonder when that conversation happens. If anybody knows, I'd love to hear from you. Dan Cullen says, looks an awesome blast. Great music to suit. Yep, thank you for that, Rachel. Thank you very much indeed for Jet Demolition, and congrats on your Runners-Up Award. That would have been some job, yeah. The other thing, which I didn't really mention, because I think it sort of spoke for itself, those 2 towers, there was a dispute about them. I can't actually remember the background to it. There was a dispute over them, which is why they were brand spanking new. I don't think they were ever even occupied, but they were brand new, and it was decreed that they would be brought down. If you have a look around, they are surrounded on all three sides that you could see, very, very close proximity, even to the point where they got protection on some of the neighbouring blocks. So to bring them down in their own footprint, perfect job. Congrats, people. Peter McKenna's just updated. This is a running theme. So he couldn't get on Facebook, went on to LinkedIn. He then went over to YouTube and says he's updated Facebook, won't let him watch any videos, not even live ones. And then he cures it. Going back to the Keestrack, all yellow kit with a few reds. Yeah, I think that was just the rhubarb and custard thing. Stir in a bit of colour, bit of contrast. Why the hell not? That's one mighty outfit there. Yeah, that was a lot of kit. All the money sat there working, yeah, but I would imagine there's a fair bit of money coming out the other end as well. Graham says, nice setup that. Looks a well-organised site, says Peter McKenna. And there's Dan Cullen going exactly the same way as me. Some pounds worth there. Yeah, absolutely right. There's our friend Wolfwelder from the US of A, the mighty US of A. Good morning to you, sir. Gary Muirhead. That felt like a stack of poppadoms. Did anyone come back to me on the poppadoms? Should I have punched the bloke in the throat that put his fist through a whole pile of poppadoms? I feel like I missed a trick. I really do. That's a whole other story. Let's have a look. Dip them, yeah. No, listen. I understand. The use case for poppadoms. I don't put them in my curry. To my mind, they're like a tortilla. You dip them in stuff and you eat them. I don't put them on curries. I realise that some people do. My thing is the etiquette of you have a pile. When I go out with my family and there is all 6 of us, we order 12 poppadoms, 2 each. So we're sat there chatting away, dipping into chutneys of various types before the meal arrives, okay? But when those 12 arrive, they're stacked high, we all take one off and we then go about cracking them up and then eating them. This guy, the 12 arrived, crunch, straight through the lot. Poppadom shrapnel we created. Is that right? Is that proper? I don't believe so, but if you know otherwise, please let me know. Particularly if there's any Indians watching. If there should be anybody from India watching who would like to guide us on proper poppadom etiquette, assuming that poppadoms exist in India and they're not just a UK invention. I don't believe that's the case, but you never know. Chicken tikka masala, created here. Anybody got any information on the latest Yanmar prototype electric mini excavator where they've introduced a challenge for conventional hydraulic systems, an elastic actuator composed of electric motor, reducer and spring? I think we come back to that. Well, okay, so maybe I was wrong. Peter McKenna says, break them all at the start. You can't fit a full one in your mouth at once, can you? No, you can't. But then, not that I'm being stingy here, but when I order myself 2 poppadoms, I'm kind of expected to eat 2 poppadoms. Now, I know my poppadom capacity is 2. If I have 2 and then I have my curry, chicken tikka biryani, ideally with a vegetable curry on the side, that's me done. I don't need any side dishes or desserts or anything like that. 2 poppadoms, chicken tikka masala, chicken tikka biryani, and a vegetable curry. That's me good. I will leave there feeling full and satiated and satisfied. If somebody decides to shove their fist through all the poppadoms, how do I know I've had 2? How do I know I'm not getting just 1.5 and therefore being shortchanged? How do I know that I'm not eating 2.5 or even 3, which might limit my ability to eat my proper food? I'm taking mine off. Lots of people saying no sound. Don't know what happened there. The weird thing is, when I looked at the video, I still had it on my computer. I could see the timeline and the spikes of the music. It had music, it wasn't playing, so I replaced it. There you are. There's Mick Dalton saying no music. Going back to our question of the day, all the aches and pains, and aches and pains, and the accompanying involuntary noises. You know, the grunts and the groans that you make when you sit down or you stand up or you reach for something a little bit too high. When does that come about? Is there a, you know how men start? Listen, look, I'm losing my hair. I'll make no bones about it. That's why I'm wearing a hat, because there's a light above my head. There comes a time when your genetics say, okay, it's about time that bloke's beard went white. It's about time that we switched on the male pattern baldness, because that's his age now. Okay, I understand that. Is there a similar genetic switch that says, right, from henceforth, from this day forward, every time this bloke gets in or out of a chair, he has to go, ugh! When does that happen? I don't know. Dan Cullen says GC ground control. It's not ground control. I think GC is actually this is the wrong term, but the value engineered, like the cheaper alternative. As I say, it just... Listen, the very fact that we're having this conversation and nobody's got a categorical answer suggests that my gripe about the Caterpillar naming convention has at least some grounds. You know, the very fact that we've got an audience here of, you know, plant porn addicts. I know what my WhatsApp looks like. You guys are sending videos to each other all day long and sometimes all night long. Here's another digger. Here's another digger. Look at this. Have you seen this dump truck? Have you seen that dozer? You guys know plant better than I possibly could, and yet nobody can look at the latest naming convention from the Caterpillar and say, yes, well, the reason they've done that, it's a nonsense. It is absolutely a nonsense. However, no lunchbox, which is all good. Ken Hatcher says, same again, models for different countries, lower emissions, cheaper manufacturing. Yeah, listen, the only reason I know about the GC thing is when I was in Malaga last, a good couple of years ago now, they had some GC breakers there. So they had the full spec breakers with all of the bells and whistles, and then they had the GC. So if you want a breaker, but you don't want all of the bells and whistles, you can have this one instead. That's the idea. But all of the other stuff, D3HC, GTA, GTI, Turbo, Lord alone knows. None of today's card schemes will produce an operator for a crawler crane and wrecking board attachment has the necessary hands, feet and eye coordination that old school demolition company operators excelled at. I was once told, and I don't know how true this is because I never actually saw him in action, but I was once told that one of the UK's foremost ball and crane operators was Howard Button. Howard Button, the outgoing CEO of the NFTC. Apparently, I was told by somebody that I respect enormously, apparently he was the daddy when it came to a wrecking ball and crawler crane. As I say, never got to see it, but I'll take their word for it. Dan Cullen says, great music, love it. I think that was a Cat movie. Gary Muirhead, I see Cat going back to the old ways, getting rid of that stupid big high back end. Yes. The Quasimodo design, yes, quite right. And no quick hitch. Maybe that's one of the things it gives when you go GC. If you're looking to cut costs, maybe that doesn't come. Does a quick cut or quick hitch come as standard with Caterpillar machines? Probably not. Let's have a look. Mick Norton says Caterpillar excavator is demonstrating all that is worth practice using lifting straps over the bucket teeth. Funny you should say that because Ken Hatcher says lifting on teeth, lol. Yeah, corporate video that. Now, I'm going to leap to Jim Turner's defence here. So, okay, you may recall that two members of the Breakfast Show audience promised to produce songs for the Breakfast Show, theme tunes or something very similar. The two people involved were Chris Ford and Jim Turner. Now, very quickly, here is the Chris Ford contribution.
Marks a man on the Breakfast Show. Demolition news is the way to go.
So, we've played that before. That was Chris Ford's take. Now, Jim Turner said that he had a friend with a professional recording studio. They were going to go away and do something. And they did. Jim, about 2 weeks ago, sent me a very rough edit of the song what he wrote, being performed by a professional musician. But I've sat on it purely because Jim said they were going to master it properly and produce something a little more clear. So Jim has done the job. I promise you, Jim really has done the job. But there is a better version coming. So given there's a better version coming, I'm sitting on it until we get the proper version. But thank Gary for the reminder. Jim, if you're listening, looking forward to hearing the proper job. Ken Hatcher says, nice music. I think that was the Wrecking Ball one, possibly? Not sure. That's cool. Love the Wrecking Ball. Pity they don't use them here. As I say, I keep talking about the stuff that I wrote. I wrote a thing recently. Just to be clear, I get ideas in my head. I'm a writer. You know, come what may, I'm a writer. I know I do this, but I'm a writer. So I get ideas in my head, and it just helps my brain if I can write it down and then put it somewhere. So I've got a platform called Medium where I do my non-industry writing. And I wrote a thing a while back that just occurred to me. Do you remember when you were a child, for example, and you used to have your friends, you know, around the way, you know, on your road, on your street, in your block or whatever it might be, and you used to go and kick a football around together, or you'd play, I don't know, my big one was runouts. Does anybody else remember runouts when you were a kid? But we used to play cricket and football, and you know, everybody would. You know, if somebody went out with a football, everybody would turn up and you'd all have a bit of a rough and a tumble and everything else. Nobody tells you the day that you stop doing that. There comes a day where you stop putting a football under your arm and going over the park, and then your friends arrive. Nobody tells you that was the last time you would do that. And the bit that I wrote about was, you know, when I'm a father of 4. So I remember the first time my eldest daughter was handed to me, midwife handed her over, and I held my daughter, and I held my twins, and then I held my son Fred, and I put them on my shoulders, and I held them in my arms across the road, and everything. And then one day, and again, nobody tells you this, one day I put them down, and I never got to pick them up again. They're all as big as me now. I'm not going to be picking any of them up anytime soon. But nobody tells you that. And I realise it's a long, drawn-out way of saying it, but the Wrecking Ball is the same. We were closing for press on Contract Journal, and we were basically a story short. It was a weekly magazine, and we closed for press on a Tuesday. So on the Monday morning, I went into work, and everybody, we were a story short. Somebody had sold an additional bit of advertising. We needed an editorial article to balance that out. Has anyone got anything? And I literally just said, well, on my way to work this morning, there was a Wrecking Ball working up the road from me. And they said, give them a call, go down, get some photographs, talk about, you know, because Wrecking Balls were on their way out. That was the last time I saw a Wrecking Ball working in person. I wish I'd made more of it, because once I'd done that and I wrote about it and it was published and everything else, never ever saw that again in person. Still see them in the States and stuff like that on YouTube and whatever, but that was the last time. It was an absolute turning point, and I didn't realise it at the time. Peter McKenna says, apparently this is Wrecking Ball's reminding me of Storage Wars. Don't know. I don't watch Storage Wars, so I don't know what that all means. Thank you very much indeed for Wolf Welder, who says the music finally sounded good. I can imagine you'll go home. I imagine you'll go home at night with a very sore neck, looking up at that demo ball all day long. And again, I think this is part of a wider discussion. I'm sorry if I'm boring you today, but I've got a lot to say. I've always had this belief that demolition equipment is always and has always been a compromise. If you think about a high-reach excavator, it is a marvel of engineering. You know, to be able to reach 40, 50, 60, 70 metres up in the air, munchy, bringing tower blocks down. I think they're a fantastic thing. But never lose sight of the fact that that machine is a compromise, because it is built on a machine that wasn't designed to do that, it was designed to do that. It was designed to dig, and we've inverted it, basically. Going back to the crawler crane was designed, it's a crane, it's designed to lift stuff up and put stuff down. At no point did anyone think, well, actually, you know, if you think about a crane picking stuff up, I've picked up this keyboard and I've moved it over here, and then I'm putting it down. So you're doing it at eye level, maybe a little bit more. When you're talking about a wrecking ball, you are now looking up all day long. Compromise, you see. And obviously, as I've said previously, it was pre-tilting cab. I think he knew his better to the old wrecking ball. I agree. And I realise a lot of what I'm saying is based on nothing more than sentimentality. But as I've said, in the right hands, and I've seen a few over the years. In the right hands, a wrecking ball is pretty much as precise and pretty much as productive as a modern high-reach excavator. Andy Darvell, not out of sentimentality, but because I think he'd enjoy it. I'd love to ever go on a crane and ball. Yeah, absolutely. So would I. Never got to operate one. Wish I had now. Gone way too soon, says Dan Collins. And then Peter McKenna made a stunning return to Facebook by saying, "Hurrah! Had to uninstall and reinstall Facebook, let me do anything. Couldn't comment or watch videos, but he's back with a vengeance." Mick Norton says, Tier 1 contractors could learn a lot from the concept of social value. Potential benefits for local communities on large projects are more often than not overlooked. Yeah, and I've seen up close some very good examples of social value. And one that I will single out is SafeDem up in Bonnie, Scotland. Dundee-based demolition contractor. And the company it's employee owned now, but the main man there is William Sinclair. William's wife is actually in charge of their community liaison. So she actually goes to local schools and local outreach and literally not just we're going to be knocking a building down, there's going to be a bit of dust. Actually involves the local community in the understanding of things. I think we're overlooking that at our peril. And I've just already mentioned the books. This book that I wrote years ago with my mate John Woodward, called My Dad Does Demolition. Most of the books that we've sold, we haven't sold them one or two at a time. We've sold them 50 or 100 at a time because a local demolition contractor is going to be working very close to a school. And as part of their community outreach and engagement, they've actually taken those books, taken them to the school and given them to the children. But I do think that example from McMahon Services, reinforcing just what, never mind the legacy of it, what a demolition or a construction project can do to a local community. Yes, there is going to be some disruption. Yes, there's probably going to be some noise. There might be a bit of dust. There might be a bit of vibration. You might lose a few parking spaces, which is my case at the moment. However, you're going to end up with a shiny new railway station. All of your local eateries, so your cafe, your pub, the bakery, all of those will have benefited, and all of that money is now back in the local community to then be spent elsewhere in the community. It's round and round. Dan Cullen says one of the biggest expenses on working man, woman today is going to the cafe, buying coffee and rolls. If you cut that, you save money, but it is supporting jobs. It is a balancing act, isn't it? And I do realise, I've mentioned this before. I used to be able to go shopping on a Saturday with my other half. And we'd go, I had to buy a shirt for work, or she needed makeup, let's say. So we'd go into our local town, whether it was Epsom or Kingston or wherever it might be. We'd go, we'd buy what we needed, begrudgingly pay for the parking, and then we'd go home. Now, when you go there, my wife expects, before we've actually been to any of the shops we're actually there to visit, it's Starbucks or it's Cafe Nero or what's the other one? No, drawn a blank. There are three, but yes. So when did that become a thing? And when did it become a thing that you walked along the street with coffee in your hand? Nobody did that when I was growing up. Nobody did that until about 10 years ago, as far as I remember. And water. I went to work, when I was working in an office, I used to get up at, 7 o'clock in the morning, get myself suited and booted, jump on the bus, go to work, might have a cup of coffee around about 10 o'clock. But I managed to make it from home to the office, a journey of about 10 minutes, without the need of a bottle of water. No, at no point was I struck down with dehydration mid-morning. And yet now, everywhere you go, bottle of water. Every backpack I own, and I own a lot, weirdly, all of them, slots for water. I wouldn't think of taking a bottle of water with me. Maybe that's why I'm prune-like in appearance. Let's have a look. Dan Carter says, another point. Why are the English people always complaining why is it English people or is it just people in general? Complaining when a new job site starts up instead of being glad new homes, offices are being built. Yeah. We are, as an industry, we deliver change and we deliver improvement. But I think there is a way of selling that. And I think we miss a lot of that in, as I say, I think McMahon Services there doing a fantastic job. Peter McKenna says, this technology will help to add intelligence to machines, making them more capable of identifying the unexpected changes in ground density and eventually automate more of the fine manual tasks being held up by an industry-wide labour shortage at construction sites. Moving forward, Yanmar plans to conduct further verification tests that can realise practical applications of next-generation work machines in construction sites and similar environments. There is a point there. And this is something that we have talked about with, particularly me and Dan Cullen talk about this. We featured quite a few autonomous machines on the show this week. I think Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and possibly even yesterday as well. So we've featured a lot of autonomous machines. And I know Dan is very concerned about the impact that will have on the labour market, on the fact that it could render some people unemployed. But let's not lose sight of the fact that we have a skill shortage and we're not attracting sufficient people into the industry. Have we brought autonomy upon ourselves? Our failure to attract people in sufficient numbers is basically forcing the hand of contractors and, as a result, manufacturers to come up with ways of doing the work possibly without or with limited human intervention. We have actually made a rod for our own back, in my opinion. Please tell me if I'm wrong. You wouldn't be the first. My wife does that on a regular basis. Let's have a look. In my honest opinion, these people complaining have nothing better to do than try and scrounge a holiday money from companies as they're on the dole, lazy sods. I'm in leafy Surrey, okay? And this is honestly, I operate on a very, very small shoestring. I am not made of money. There's not a lot of money sloshing around in this place. I can assure you of that. But I do live in an affluent part of the world. Most of the people where I live, all the houses on my road, they're all owned, mostly, but owned outright. There's next door that side there's a Tesla, next door that side there's a Mercedes. Everyone's doing okay around here. So we're not talking about people on the dole and people being scroungers. It is just people. Interruptions to their daily life. I mean, we've got a situation at the moment. We've had a bit of a not a manhole collapse, but a manhole has it's broken. So at the end of my road now, there is a set of traffic lights while the guys come along and fix it. And the traffic lights, now bearing in mind, it's a side road off a side road. So there's a car every 10 minutes. So you drive up to the traffic lights realise you're there, it lets you through, you carry on. But my wife considers that a major inconvenience. It's not inconveniencing anyone. And frankly, I'd rather have that than drive her car into a big hole in the road because nobody came out to repair it. Reframing, that's what I think they call it. McMahon says, Aboriginal people have a deep connection with the land and it's central to their identity. The same cannot be said of your average NIMBY Brit middle-class Guardian reader do-gooder. NIMBY Brit middle-class Guardian reader do-gooder. No, you're absolutely right. Ah, yes, the liberal elite. I'm not a Guardian reader. I promise I'm not a Guardian reader. I thought Dan was in a kilt. That's what he told me this morning. Oh, blimey, good luck with that. Not sure what this is. Good link for Mick Norton. That's talking about the Yanmar thing. I don't know if you can snag that link, Pete, Mick, but it's there. Dan Cullen says, not a sun person. You can't strip naked while sweating like Niagara Falls, but in cold you can put on clothes to stay warm. Yeah, okay. Where are we? Dan Cullen, don't you think it's way too early to celebrate Christmas as the novelty wears off before Christmas comes? Hate these Christmas songs playing and lights up too soon after Halloween madness. Yeah, I do think it goes on for far too long. Maybe it's because it's partly because I'm not a child, but I think the biggest thing for me is that there are no children in this house anymore. I have my children, but they are not children. You know, the point where they would get home, you know, eyes all aglow as the sun goes on a Christmas morning, it's long gone. You know, they get up bleary-eyed because they've been out on the piss the night before. So I think once that's gone, a lot of the magic of Christmas is gone. And it's bloody hard work, you know. I mean, I know my wife will absolutely work herself to a frazzle because we've got her parents coming for Christmas, as we do every year. So, you know, she'll be cooking for, 8-9 people, I suppose, on Christmas Day. And it's a bloody nightmare. It's not, it's the holidays and goodwill to all men. It's like, oh, Jesus, what have I forgotten? Oh, bloody hell, I've got to get up at dawn to get the turkey on. Not as much fun as everybody would have you believe. There's a word limitation on YouTube and LinkedIn. Facebook is far more favourable platform to comment on things as there is no limit. Apparently so. Wolfwelder says, I ordered one of your stickers. I'm the fellow from Pennsylvania in the shipping address. I will take a look. I'm actually going to the post office immediately after the show because the last of my children's books, I've run out now. They are going in the post today. Question of the day. Quite a number of these when I was in pubs on a weekly occasion. Moved away. No word from them since. This was going back to people. I think Peter McKenna described them as charlatan. Yeah. And I know life gets in the way and stuff, but you know, it is sad to see, I think. Yes, Wolfwelder says it was one of the 6 stickers left. Yeah, we are down to the last knockings now, and we've only got a few of those because we had some sent through that we weren't expecting. My wife says unexpected parts of being an adult, taking care of parents as if they were children. She's doing precisely that today, taking her parents for lunch, and that's like a day. They're basically going for, I don't know, a jacket potato with cheese and beans or something like that, and she will be devoting her entire day to that because they are very slow moving. Peter McKenna agrees with me. Mars bars and Twix are tiny now. Maybe it's my appetite, but now if I need a Twix, and I need one very often, if I have a Twix, it's got to be the king size. The old one, the traditional one, it's the sort of thing I used to put in my packed lunch. Footy Williams. Walnut whips. Now, did they? Now, walnut whips. I know walnut whips with a nut on the top, but according to our friend Graham Footy Williams, they used to have a nut on the inside. Did they? I had no idea about that. What I do know, he says they don't do coffee walnut whips anymore. The proper walnut whips they do not, but I'm fairly sure that Marks and Spencer do. They're not a patch on the old walnut whip. Don't get me wrong. Don't get excited. Yeah. What about, and does anyone remember this? This is where we're going to separate the men from the old boys. Do you remember a Bounty bar? You know, the coconut chocolate thing. Do you remember that? Do you remember when it used to have a bit of cardboard in the packing? Almost like a gully of cardboard. So like a cross-section, sort of like a drainage gully. And the 2 pieces of Bounty would rest on that. Do you remember that? Anybody else? Dan Cullen says, yes, love the wagon wheel jam. The jam was what made it, surely. They haven't had a nut inside walnut whips for the past 40 years. They were my mum's favourite treat. Her second go-to was Turkish Delight. Fries, Turkish Delight. Oh, awesome. Still love those now. And I tell you what, I worked in a sweet shop, so I know this kind of crap. Does anyone remember there was a rival to the Fry's Turkish Delight called the Big Turk? Now, whereas the Turkish Delight from Fry's is that sort of shape, sort of rectangular, this was a long thing, but the Turkish Delight was really chewy, Big Turk. Not the name of one of my friends. Peter McKenna says, if you buy wagon wheels jammies from Tesco, obviously you still get the jam in them. Did not know that. Mick Norton assures us the Chelcher's birthday was actually yesterday. Morning, Chris Hynett. How's Australia and the Big Cabelco? Good question. How are you doing, Chris? And how is that Big Cabelco? I'd love to hear from you. Right, okay. Eat papadums, as per the Indians, served with a selection of dipping sauces, brushed with ghee for extra flavour. I know what to do with them. I really do know what to do with them. It's the preamble. It's, do you take one and have that to yourself, or is it acceptable for somebody to shove their fist through a pile of them and you get shrapnel as a result? I do like, do as the Indians do. I like a chicken tikka balti and eat with his fingers with chapatis. What I've just mentioned, lost my closest friend, Bruce, to a motorcycle accident some years ago. But my other closest friend was Indian. Now lives in Liverpool, got married, moved up north, haven't seen him in years. But there were two things, well, there was lots of things. I used to eat at his house on a fairly regular basis. First place I ever ate curry and anything with chili in it and everything else. And, his mum used to wind me up, offering me food that she knew was way too spicy for me, and then laughing when I couldn't eat it. But there were two things. In their house, they always had this huge saucepan on the go, and it was literally on pretty much 24/7. And it was Indian, like hot, sweet tea. And you just go in, get a cup, help yourself. Oh, I don't take sugar in tea, but that was fantastic. But the other thing, they always had a pile of chapatis on the go. Obviously, they are, as our friend has just pointed out, they are there for scooping up your curry. But a little known treat among the Indian population, chapatis with strawberry jam on. You've not lived until you've had a chapati with strawberry jam. Chris Hynett says 36 degrees, 85% humidity at 7:15 in the morning, and it's only going to get hotter. The Big Cabelco is good. My friend Alan is operating it, and I'm on the 200-ton Hitachi. That's a proper pairing, that. And there is Andy Darvell saying, very nice, mate. Is the Hitachi the 4-arm one? And yes, apparently it is. Mick Norton says, Caterpillar model numbering lettering. 3 stands for excavator. That's the product type. 20 stands for the 20-ton tonnage. D represents D series. D is newer compared with B and C. If L is after series letter, example Cat 320DL, L stands for long track excavator. Anybody else think that's a really rubbish way of doing things? Imagine how complex this would be if, rather than going to Facebook, I said you have to go to xyz.com/579/.iq.pt/ You'd look at it and just go, bollocks, I can't be bothered with that. And that is what they've got there. What size shear have you got on it? 5-ton, 46-metre reach. Proper tools they're using down under. Where are we? Anthony Jackson. Anthony Jackson, good morning, Mr. Jackson. Some of my mentors and friends have not had the last days of doing demolition they should have had. Some of those 40 years served, a real shame, and they deserve better. I am going to take a wild stab that they may have been. Let me have a look. Can I see? Let's have a very quick look. I don't know. Am I guessing right that, Anthony, you're talking about people ex-Squib? If you are saying that, I totally agree. Listen, I know I wrote a piece about all the positive contributions the Squib Group and the Squib family have made to the UK demolition industry over the past 75 years, and I stand by that. But the very fact that it goes back to something I was saying about myself, and I'm not going to make this about myself. I will swing back round. But when you've done, in my case, 35 years in a job, in a role, in an industry, you kind of lull yourself into a false sense of security. Like, I've done it for 35 years. The chances are this will see me through to retirement. And then for one thing to happen, in my instance, COVID, in the case of those people that were working with Squib, obviously the financial difficulties there, to have that snatched away. And it is. And I did, in the article that I wrote, I actually likened it to how football clubs tend to give a testimonial match to their longest serving, or particularly players that are particularly well regarded. I went to Mark Noble, the former West Ham captain. He was a one club man. He played for West Ham his entire career, and then he was calling it a day. And he now works upstairs at West Ham. And he had a testimonial match, and it was a chance for us, the fans, to say, "Thanks, Nobes, fantastic job, well done." In the field of demolition, construction, and a lot of other industries, you're not afforded that. There are people that have put in 40 years, as Anthony is alluding to there. They put in 40 years. You would have thought that somebody would have taken the time to pat them on the back and say, thanks. And they've had that thanks. And I'm not talking necessarily about bloody gold watches and stuff like that, but just the ability to say thank you. And that is why I wrote the piece about John Woodward a little while ago. He served the industry so very well over the years, and it just felt like the right thing to say. He's not fully retired, but he is retiring. So while we've still got you, while we can remember the value that you delivered, I would like to say a personal thank you. And there are so many people, ex-Squib, ex-McCormack, ex-other demolition companies. We didn't get to say that. Gary Muirhead is on his way out, so have a fantastic weekend, guys. See you all next week. Thank you very much indeed. Who else have we got here? Dan Cullen, LC long crawler tracks. H is heavy duty. No actual explanation other than what's said, but I think it's in India, only product of CAT. GC is the more economical, reducing downtime of fuel consumption. Totally agree. Yeah. Dan Cullen, you know how well organised the UK construction industry is. He's been waiting for some diesel since 3:00 yesterday. It looks like a no-show today and frustrating. Dan Cullen has got up at dawn, braved the elements, gone to work, and is currently twiddling his thumbs because somebody forgot to say diesel. Yeah. Mick Norton says, much to my wife's displeasure, I often mention to our grandchildren at this time of the year, in all probability, Santa Claus is dead. I saw a fantastic clip yesterday of a guy walking hand in hand with his little girl through a shopping mall, and they get very close to a toy shop, and he covers her eyes and her ears and runs her past. Yeah. Isn't that the same as the thing with the ice cream man? If you can hear the ice cream man chimes, it means he's sold out. Isn't that the deal? Dan Cullen says it goes around in circles. Your parents look after you when growing up. As they get old, we look after them. Funny how things go in the world, but it's funny how when some families fall apart after the death of a parent, they want the house, money, farm. It's so sad. Yeah, absolutely. Saw that in not my. There were only two of us. It was myself and my sister, and we were in complete agreement with everything on my parents' estate and everything else. I'm not talking country estate. I'm just talking about what they left behind. So ours was all very smooth, but I've seen that over the years. And I did. Again, maybe I'll write this down one of these days. I did get to have a conversation because my mum was in hospital, and I got to spend a lot of time with my dad. I did actually get to say to him, how much I appreciated what he'd done for me as a kid, the amount of sacrifice that he made and all the work that he did and everything else. And to my mind, going down to visit him when he was on his way out, as it were, it wasn't a chore, it wasn't a duty, it was just payback. He gave up everything for me, so for me to give up some time to see him, not that big a deal, I don't think. Mick Norton says, a modern day penguin bar is no more than a bourbon biscuit coated in chocolate. Yeah, but a penguin used to be a big deal, a proper fistful of chocolate. Sent you a friend's request on Facebook, sent you a message with the link. Is that aimed at me? If it is, I'll have a look. I've got all of my socials turned off at the moment because I'm doing this. The only interaction I'm doing is through this, but if it's for me, I'll have a look at it afterwards. No, actually, it's aimed at Mick Norton. So presuming you're the same Mick Norton on LinkedIn. Dan Cullen, isn't it funny how people used to laugh at the Indian Chinese food? Look now, what do a lot of people eat now? What restaurant they go to? The only time I will seek out an English restaurant, and it's always the same one, the only time I will seek out an English restaurant is if I've got friends or business contacts coming in from overseas. There's a restaurant just off Covent Garden in London called Rules. It's been there for about, off the top of my head, probably 200 years. And it is very, very, very oldie worldy, very English. Won't find no chow mein or chicken tikka on the menu there. It is proper English fare. I like it. Americans, Brazilians, because I took my mate Fabio there, the Japanese, they love it. I like it, they love it. But when it comes to, if I'm saying to my wife, we'll go out for dinner, what do you fancy? Never, not once has she ever said, the English for me, please. Usually Thai or Indian. I was eating Chinese and Indian food at 10 years old. You were ahead of me. I've just mentioned my wife. I'll come back to that in just a second. Myself and my wife made a deal, a pact when we first started seeing each other. She agreed that she would try pie and mash, which I'd been raised on as a Londoner. And as part of that deal, I got to eat curry for the first time. I would have been 19 years old. First time I ever ate a curry. And it was this. I don't know whether this was my lack of adventure or the fact that we hadn't cottoned on to more fancy things. First curry I had was called a chicken curry. None of your masalas or your danseks or your boonas. It was chicken curry. It was chicken with curry. That's what it was. Hooked ever since. Chris Hynett, can you send Mark videos of your kit? Please do. Although we are in contact with Cabelco Australia, so we will be doing some of that anyway. You can do, Peter McKenna says, you can do 40 years of cracking work, get high praise, do one thing wrong and you're dust. No one looks at all the good you've done. Sad but true, I'm afraid. And I've been victim of that over the years. Have a wonderful weekend, guys. Stay safe. Looking forward to seeing you all on Monday. New site, says Dan Cullen. Yeah. He'll be on a new site. I'll be sat right here. At least he's getting paid while waiting for Diesel. We could be sat at home unpaid. He's been rushed off his feet the last few days, so should be thankful for small mercies. Yeah. Do you have an @ or a hashtag for the show so I can put it on my socials? Let me have a think about that. I think, funnily enough, Peter has just answered it. That was what I would do. I would share the link off YouTube. That is the easiest way. Dan Cullen says, thank you, Peter. I prefer flat out, not a twiddling finger. So that's talking about his workload, okay. Let's have a look. Don't have to twiddle thumbs. Just copy and link the paste. I think we're on cross purposes here. It's Friday and we have no lives, which is why I've been sat here talking for the last hour and a half. We are... What are we? We are 20 seconds away from an hour and a half on a Friday. Do you people have no homes to go to? I know some of you are at home, so ignore that. Right, I do need to go to the post office because I've got books to get off, including a couple that are going down under. Dan Cullen says the shows are getting longer. It's because of you buggers. If you would all stop asking questions, good ones, if you would all stop making sensible comments, the show wouldn't go on anywhere near as long. I'd be quite happy for this to be 15 minutes done and dusted. I can go and put my feet up then. I'm blaming you. Dan, you in particular. I don't mind. I like it. In Bradford, in 1975, used to get a proper chicken curry for 50p. It was enough to choke a horse. It may well have had some horse in it back in those days. You never know. And I have no problem with that. I've eaten a bit of horse over the years, and it's okay. If you're a horse lover, I apologise, but it's not bad. And there is Peter McKenna saying, "Accept my friend request me." I think that's asking you to rather than demanding that you do, but you get the idea. Right, people, that's an hour and a half. Please go and have a fantastic day. Dan Cullen, stay cold because you like it that way. Everybody else, stay warm, keep warm. Please look after yourself. Have a good day, have a good weekend. I'll see you again on Monday for more of the nonsense that is the Breakfast Show. Look forward to it. See you then.